All right, guys, before we get started, a big thank you to our partner, Microsoft Windows 11, the official operating system of the NFL and the exclusive sponsor of the LA Chargers. The all-new Windows 11, they're here to bring you closer to what you love, like the Chargers and the Final Drive. Learn about all the awesome new features of Windows 11 at windows.com. And welcome into a winning edition of the Final Drive. Alongside Hayley Elwood, I'm Chris Hayre. Chargers win 41-22 in Cincinnati. I've been thinking about how to describe this one, Hayley, and I still don't have an answer, so I'm going to let you start.
Oh, there's so much pressure to that because adjectives, let's throw out wild, crazy. I mean, this was just one of those games that was so bananas. I think, it was almost like we were still kind of reeling off that Pittsburgh Sunday night win a couple weeks ago. And this is one that doesn't have similar vibes necessarily, but kind of, because obviously to jump out to a 24-0 lead and then have Cincinnati bring it within one score into the fourth, you're just going, like this is just bananas. Not to mention whatever was going on with Joe Burrow and his pinky finger and all of that. And then the fourth quarter came alive. And that is something that this team has talked about a lot this whole season. And Brandon Staley specifically is playing your best football in the fourth quarter when it matters the most. And a big difference, he said, in comparison to what happened against Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago, where they didn't allow the Bengals to do anything in the fourth. And really, and I know we'll talk about it, but that Tevaughn Campbell scoop and score, and you tweeted it, really changed the trajectory of that game. And really from that point forward, there was no turning back. So just an absolute crazy one. A lot of contributions. I know this team has talked a lot about playing complementary football in terms of the defense helping out the offense and vice versa. We saw that at points during this game. We saw deep threats, the deep passing attack come alive. So there is a lot to unpack in this one, in a very pivotal win and a very critical win, and one that Derwin James had said every one of these games moving forward means a lot. So, it's again, another one the Chargers follow up a loss with a win, which is what you got to do, especially at this point in the season.
You're right. And I think that's the most important thing I think to take out of this, Hayley, is what you said. It's a pivotal win, because if you don't beat the Bengals, you're 6-6 and you were on the verge of getting left behind in the AFC. And, this is a wild card game, essentially. If week 18 it comes down to a tie between the Bengals and the Chargers, you got a tiebreaker in your back pocket. I guess the best way I could describe it, I was thinking about it, it's like a play in like 3 acts, right? The first act was this 24-0, just wow, look at this Chargers team. The second act was the Bengals storming back, a little bit of drama with Burrow and the pinky. And the third act was the Bengals on the verge of taking the lead for the first time, and Tevaughn Campbell scooping and scoring a Joe Mixon fumble, his 6th fumble, I think, in over 1,000 career carries in the NFL. I mean, going into this, I was like, all right, Joe Mixon never fumbles, but if you can get a couple from Burrow, you're in good shape. They got a couple from Burrow, and then the biggest one was Tevaughn Campbell. And listen, Tevaughn has been put in tough positions this year, playing for Asante and doing his best out there. But they don't win the Kansas City game without him. And you could argue that they don't win this game without him. And that was the turning point. That kind of got this team back on track and said, okay, hey, let's finish this up. Let's get out of Cincinnati 7-5.
That's very true. I had Kelsey Conway from the Enquirer on Playmakers this past week just to kind of talk about this game. And when I asked her sort of at the end, what might be a deciding factor in this one? She talked about turnovers, and she also talked about maybe who has the ball last or who could make the biggest game-changing play. And I think this kind of parlays into both of those topics, right? You had 4 turnovers, I believe, that this Chargers defense forced today, but then you also really that felt like the moment. It felt like, granted they were only up 31-22 at that point, and there was a lot of time left in the game, but that really did sort of just change the feel and the vibe of everything from that point forward. And we've seen that a couple times this season in terms of, can the Chargers make that play? Can they do that one, make that one play that's really going to kind of change the outcome of this game? And that one was obviously big. Eckler then scores, they score the field goal at the end. So they go on a bit of a swing in the fourth quarter, but that play just determined and really the outcome ultimately. When you kind of look back and you talk about momentum a lot in this game, and that was a huge momentum boost for the Chargers for sure.
So the Chargers, they outscored the Bengals 33-0 in the first and fourth quarter. So they started strong and they finished strong, and it got a little bit hairy in the middle of the game. But Justin, just another great game, 26-35, 317 yards, 3 touchdowns. Had that one interception that was essentially a punt. I mean, it wasn't something that was game changing. And he found the deep ball today. Mike Williams with a pair of 40+ yard receptions. Keenan Allen had 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. He had 2 touchdowns all season. Quarterback Keenan Allen showed up in the second quarter with that Philly special to Justin Herbert, and Jalen Guyton got rolling 4 for 90, that 44-yard touchdown, and almost had another 30+ yard score. He stretched to get in there, but I think Austin cleaned that up. So when we talk about the deep ball, everybody talks about Justin getting the ball down the field. Man, they were able to do that early and really set them up nicely before it got interesting.
I know that that's been top of mind and something that Chargers fans have sort of talked about and questioned where has that been over these last few games. But Staley today in his presser said they just really like the matchups that Cincinnati was giving them in the secondary versus those receivers. And they took advantage of that for sure. One thing about Jalen Guyton that's actually really funny is I was watching ESPN Sunday NFL Countdown pregame, and they were talking about this game. And Rex Ryan specifically was talking about Jalen Guyton. Like, where is he? Where has he been? Rex, hello. Hi. He showed up today.
He's here, Rex.
Maybe he foreshadowed what we were going to see, but it was really great to see Guyton get involved, especially when, there's been a lot of talk about who's that second running back, and really who's that kind of third receiver who can sort of help out when Keenan and Mike are doing their thing. And you saw all of those guys get involved today. But when it comes to the deep ball, Staley said they really like the matchups. They were going to take it. And Herbert also just talked about, it just helps the offense so much when you can get those big chunk plays, because, it goes without saying there's less that you have to do, obviously, to then convert moving on from there. But to get those chunk plays, to get in positions, to put yourself in scoring positions is huge.
Hayley, so much happened throughout the course of this game. One thing I wanted to mention, though, is we've established that the identity of this team is that they're going to go for it on fourth down, like no matter what, unless it's something where it's like, all right, let's punt it away. We're too deep back. More times than not, they're going to go for it on fourth down. And that first touchdown from Herbert to Keenan, that was on fourth down. That was a 4th and goal touchdown. So the fact that they've kind of established this identity and they're comfortable with saying, hey, we have 4 downs to score. I think that's big. I think it was big for them to kind of show up on fourth down right at the beginning of this game. The Bengals won the toss. They deferred. So to get up the way they did, and using that extra down, that kind of set the tone for the type of game it was going to be, at least at the outset, to go up 24-0.
It did. And sometimes recent history and recent games, those fourth downs haven't been so promising for the Chargers, if you will, to use a word like that. But I think, we've heard them talk about when they have gone right this season, a lot of that has also gone down to sort of feel and vibe and confidence. And to echo sort of your point right there, from the get-go, to start with the ball on that opening drive, to start hot, to go down there and say, hey, we have the confidence to get this in on fourth down. That was definitely huge and definitely big, and sort of just a tone setter, which you also said, just for the remainder of the game. But in terms of of how maybe they've sort of gambled on some of those in recent games and it hasn't necessarily gone their way, it was big to sort of start it out in that sense and really give your offense the confidence that they could go get it done.
As we tape this, the rain is coming down hard in Cincinnati.
There it is.
That's the thing. Like the Chargers, they dodged a bullet too with having to play a rain game here in Cincinnati. But the turnovers, being opportunistic with getting the ball back, and one was that one play, Hayley, with Jamar Chase. It was an in-stride touchdown that turned into an interception just like that. I mean, good on Michael Davis for recovering and being able to make that play after Jamar Chase kind of gets in front of him there. But I mean, have you ever seen an interception like that?
That's one of the craziest things. I've never seen that. I just was staring at my TV and like just shock and awe, because it absolutely would have been a touchdown. But like you said, Michael Davis sort of regained his composure and have the awareness to go in and it was tipped. He picks it off. That was insane. That was absolutely insane. And to me, felt very similar to sort of the beginning of that Kansas City game where they were just forcing these turnovers, but they were also going their way. And that's been something that we hadn't seen from this Chargers team over the last couple of weeks. They were forcing turnovers, but the other team was still falling on the ball, or it just wasn't necessarily landing back with the Chargers. They were making the play, but not finishing it. They did that today, especially at the beginning of the game, where it really, really, to me, sort of echoed those similar like Kansas City vibes. And then it got tight, obviously, but then Tavon Campbell, like you mentioned in KC, made that game-breaking play in the fourth. So that interception was just absolutely just bananas. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. I'm not sure I'll ever see anything like it again. And I will say this, that to me also proves that sometimes interceptions shouldn't go down against the quarterback, because
no.
You know what I mean? Like that was just one of those kind of like when the ball fell out of, tipped off of Austin's hands last week. You're like, oh, that just goes on Burrow's stat line, but that was not his play at all.
No, it definitely wasn't. And, with Joey going down early in the game, having Uchenna Nwosu step up with that strip sack and recovery, the Chargers defense played really, really well. They shut down Mixon in that first half. And when you get up on a team the way that they did, it's like, okay, you have to go away from the running game a little bit. Now, slowly but surely, the Bengals crept back into it. Mixon had a touchdown and got back in the mix, no pun intended. But it's just one of those things where playing 60 minutes of football, it's tough. There's always a game within a game. And, for this Chargers team, Haley, they're 7-5 now. They have 3 division games in front of them. They have the Giants next week, who I believe Mike Glennon had a concussion today. Daniel Jones, I don't know what his status is. So that's an interesting game for the Chargers that they have to take care of next Sunday at SoFi Stadium. But Giants, Texans, and 3 division games. I mean, there are so many possibilities with this team. Everything's in front of them right now, playing meaningful December football.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And I think, that was one thing that I think some Chargers fans were bummed about last week in the loss to Denver, because if you had 3 divisional wins, you truly do control your own destiny moving forward. But that loss to Denver sort of stung. But when you look at sort of the schedule that they have laid out in front of them, and also, tap into this win over the Bengals, it truly does. It is laid out. And all these guys talked about after the game, the goal was to get to 1-0, just get to 1-0 and try to stack. And I think that for me is the biggest thing, when we wrap up or when we kind of talk about, any final thoughts or what do you want to see? Like, that's it to me. It's seeing this consistency. It's, can they build on this? Can they do this? Because we've lived in this sort of back and forth over this last month plus of win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. And here we are. So can you do it? Can you stack it? This Giants team, they lost today. You mentioned it. Daniel Jones was out. Mike Glennon was diagnosed with a concussion after the game, or the news at least came out. Who knows what's happening there? But every week you got to show up, and that other team is going to show up too. Every week. There's too much parity right now in not only the AFC, the entire NFL this season. It's just a crazy, this game was indicative of that too. There was so much craziness in this game that they found a way to win. And so it's stack it, get to 2-0, get to 3, start going. And they have we talked about this 3-game stretch as being critical, but they have 2 games in a very short amount of time coming up starting next Sunday against the Giants. And then you look at Kansas City on Thursday night. So there's a lot of football that's going to be packed into a week span that's coming up for this team, but a win can help you hopefully build that momentum and get your mind right to take on that challenge as you move into December and then into January.
And in December too, Haley, you have to be in lockstep. You have to be together. And I think that this team is together. I think all 3 phases showed up today. And I just think that the guys are believers in each other. And I think that's so important. I mean, just the littlest things can separate, a 7-win team from a 3-win team, or a 9-win team from a 5-win team. And, just those intangibles that I think a lot of these guys possess in that locker room, I think could take them a long way in December. I guess you mentioned closing thoughts. Austin 14 for 59. He had a touchdown today. He scored in 5 of his last 6 games. He'd be the first one to tell you those fumbles aren't acceptable. And believe me, he'll take it to heart and he'll be better next week. That's for sure. As far as the second running back goes, I think that this offense, we've talked about it so much. I think this offense is just going to ride with Justin and spread the ball around to his playmakers, Keenan and Mike. And you saw getting Keenan and Mike involved so early opened up things for Jalen Guyton today. And, there's still the tight ends on this football team. There's still Austin coming out of the backfield. Some of those short passes are like extended runs. And I think that's just how they're going to play football right now. We're in December already. That second running back position, really, Justin Jackson had 6 carries for 15 yards today. And that was it outside of, Austin and, Justin had 1 scramble for 6 yards. Jalen Guyton 1 for -1. So I think this is how they're going to play ball, Haley. They're going to throw it around the yard with Justin, and then they're going to get guys involved with kind of the short passing game and let it ride.
Well, like you said, it's December. So, this is what you got.
This is it. This is it.
And I believe all their running backs were active today. So they weren't kind of dealing with that. Okay, we're going to send this guy down to have this guy be part of the game plan. It was, hey, we're going to throw all of them on the active roster and sort of play the hot hand or play how it goes and see how it goes. And that was certainly the case. And this team, was able to get the passing game working to the point where they didn't really need to deal with the run to not deal with the run, but you know what I mean, to actually like have it be a huge part of this game necessarily. But it is, it's kind of what you got at this point. And so how teams defend it and choose to defend it, we'll see moving forward. But this is one of those games where the offense really, really got rolling through the passing game. And like I said, you hope they can build on that. You hope you can see consistency from it, because we saw it in Philly, but then we didn't see it the next week. We saw it against the Steelers, but then in Denver, it sort of took a lull. But here it is again, it's back. So you just kind of hope that they get that going and they get that rolling. But the defense, as you said, really sort of came alive. And Brandon Staley said, really, they won the day for the Chargers today. Not to minimize the offensive contributions, but what the defense did against a very, very hot Bengals team that was just stacked on really all sides of their offense, every side from the run game to the pass game. They truly, truly held their own. And like he said, won the day for the Bolts.
Had this game been a, 27-25, like squeaker of a win, then you're like, oh man, well, we won, but the way we won, it just didn't feel right. They at least closed that fourth quarter 17-0, right? That's the momentum that you can take into the rest of this month and the rest of the season, is that, okay, hey, it didn't go as well as we wanted to in the middle 8 or the middle 2 quarters, the middle 15, but we found a way to get this done, and we emphatically closed it. We emphatically started the game, and it's a great opportunity to get to 8-5 against a Giants team that's struggling right now. And with 3 division games to go, with 2 already in your back pocket, this team has a lot in front of them.
Yep. You nailed it. And this Sunday night game that's going to happen tonight after we record this is very, very big. And we'll see what happens with the AFC West too. But this is still a crazy division in and of itself. But you kind of can only worry about what you can do. And so getting a win today against Cincinnati was huge. And like I said, and like these guys said, just kind of goal is to keep stacking. So they got one this week, move forward and stack.
Yeah. By the time you guys listen to this, that Raiders Washington football team game will be over, as well as the Kansas City Chiefs and the Broncos on Sunday Night Football. And we'll have an idea of kind of where the Chargers are there. So big win in Cincinnati for Hayley Elwood. I'm Chris Hayre. This has been The Final Drive, presented by Windows 11.